Hi, everyone. Today we are talking to Erik Herrström, a designer and agency owner or studio owner based in Vienna. And yeah, before we dive any deeper, can you quickly give us a picture of who you are and what led you to end up freelancing?
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Sweden, where I studied at a school called Hyper Island, a school where you kind of learn how to teach yourself how to do things creatively. I don't have any design education. I don't have any business education. Um, but I was super eager to become a really good designer. I moved to the US, where I was offered an internship to work at RGA, a really big agency back then with 650 people in New York, and I was part of redesigning Nike.com many years ago, and continued working for brands like Google and Beats and things like this. Ended up spending nearly a decade in New York, with the last 4 years working at Spotify. Um, and during this time, I had also started dating someone in Austria, in Vienna. And after a couple of years of long distance relationship, I decided to move here during the pandemic. And that's when I started freelancing.
It's interesting. We've had a couple of guests who said they moved to either back to Vienna or to Vienna during the pandemic.
Right.
Interesting overlap
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
So, when did you start freelancing? Was it when you were already, you said you were in New York and you had a job there and then you came to Vienna, or were you already doing freelancing on the side of the job that you were doing, or was the studio something you started outright here? How did
Yeah.
you
I
get there?
just as so many other designers, I always done a few small things on the side, of course, of my real job. But I quit Spotify when I moved here. So at the end of 2020, I started freelancing for real. Super scary, right? Jumping into something you never done before, thinking that there's no one out there that possibly want to work with me. But yeah, things it turned out differently, so it was super fun.
Yeah, it turned out very differently. We'll get to that pretty soon, actually. Um, what was actually then the moment? Because when you started out, how was it getting clients at first? Because you mentioned like it was scary. You don't know who would work with you. Like, how did it all came about?
Yeah, just as like all designers out there, right? All creatives, we struggle with this idea of like daring to put out our portfolio, really having that out there, saying that here I am. Does anyone want to work with me? You feel like you're going to be judged, and all of this. Luckily, I've always had it kind of like as a thing that I always have a portfolio up. I know everyone is different like that, but I had that, and I managed to have. Um, a refreshed portfolio with a few new projects when I went freelance. Wrote on all social media that I was going freelance, but I also wrote a lot of people in my that I had worked with in the past from different agencies or different places, basically, and said that hey, I'm available for freelance if anyone wanna, if you need support.
Yeah, that's also very common. Well, very common story, and it started kind of similar to us too, where we just like
Uh,
reached out to our network trying to get anyone to work with us, and then got like some clients here, some small projects there. And yeah, so when you started out, was there like always some kind of vision that you want to be a studio owner, or was it more like, yeah, let's just see where it goes?
You know what? No, actually not. I thought that I was just going to be freelancing. I was kind of like not sure how the freelancing was going to go to begin with, but it turned out to be very fruitful. And I didn't have a plan at all to start a studio.
Yeah. And how was it in the beginning for you? So when you started getting clients, did you already know how to price your work, or like were there any hiccups in that regard?
I think what's so common is that we believe that you need to know all these things yourself. And in my case, um, I had been working with people that had gone freelance, that were at my level or higher or lower, and then I was able to ask them about pricing. Especially since my network was mainly in the US, I kept on freelancing towards the US, and yeah, I asked around for the levels. So um, something that I always done ever since the beginning is to try to keep my pricing um, at the highest possible level for the experience and craft I have, so that um, yeah, I don't know. Somehow I managed to charge the right way from the get-go, but it was because I asked a lot of people for advice.
That's also such a common theme.
It's so important that people say that, because I think a lot of people are scared to ask or
Embarrassed.
embarrassed to ask because
Yeah.
they want to kind of seem like they have it all together, or I don't know, it's like a weird dynamic in our industry, and it's so valuable to be able to ask people and then to actually do it.
I think also money is
100%.
a very difficult topic of conversation. Like we grow up, like it's never like an
Yeah, I
easy
think a lot of
topic.
people think it's taboo to ask about things like that, but if we did more of that in our industry, I think there would just be not as much discrepancy between the prices, that some people are just charging nothing and other people are charging a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why it gets confusing even for clients to know how much something is worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, after you started out, I'm really curious, what was this one client, let's say this one first big client that you started working with?
I was actually able to jump on a project for Airbnb quite suddenly after going freelance. So that was super exciting, of course. I was working through another agency, so it wasn't a direct client, but
Hmm.
Do you think, well, I think this question is maybe obvious, but do you feel like you're being in New York and gaining experience in the various, like the big agency you were in, and then also working for Spotify, do you think those all contributed to the fact that you were able to have this network when you started freelancing, where you already knew, like you could ask these people maybe if they need help?
mm, I find this to be a super interesting topic because I come across quite a few designers who start a studio right after school, um, and this is really tricky, I think, because then you don't necessarily have the network more than what you have from school, um, and it could be really tricky to get into it, right? So in that sense, I only done it one way, right? And I did it when I already had over 10 years experience of working, both in Sweden and then in the US. I do think that it helps a lot to have the experience from different places. Like I had worked at 4 different places by that time, plus gone to school. I think it could help a lot to have the experience, but it doesn't have to be in the US per se. Like if you have been with clients or agencies in Europe or wherever you are in the world, I think you have built a network somehow, and you get to nurture that network.
That's super interesting. When you were
Hmm.
like, when you were working at the agencies, were you also doing like, let's say, client slash project management, or was your role solely as a designer?
Solely as a designer.
Okay,
Yeah.
because my follow-up question then is, how did it feel to be suddenly managing those clients?
Yeah. Somehow I think it's a bit of a personality trait that I'm decent at that, I would say. But also because I had done some projects on the side of my real work in the past, it kind of felt normal to me. Um, but I honestly think that where I probably learned the most about communications is to really, really pay attention to how account managers, project managers, etc., at agencies and at the in-house agency of Spotify were communicating, and that way, I feel like I managed to pick that up at least. So that's good.
Yeah, because I do remember that for us, it was a bit of a jump to be
Hmm.
like, okay, just execution based, whereas then starting to manage projects and clients, we had like a lot of processes not in place for that. And
Yeah.
then it just kind of like started evolving. Was it similar for you? So when you started landing your own clients, did you have like the processes already in place, or was there something that you had to change? Like, what were the biggest changes that you had to do?
To me, I feel like I was improvising along the way with the experience I had, right? How a process should go down. But I also feel like when you're a freelancer, you often have to adapt, unless it's a direct client. If you work through an agency or let's say I was also hired in-house to other companies, then you adapt to their process. But when you have a direct client, of course, then you have to wing it and you have to sell a process. You have to explain that in a contract. You have to wing it. But I think it comes down to seeing what works in conversations and being like really honest and know what you talk about. Because if you present something in a contract that you don't know in and out, like then it's going to be really hard to get someone else to believe in that you're the right person for the job.
When you are in this initial client conversation, because you in the beginning you were talking with agencies, and so you had the
Mm.
client indirectly from the agency. But when you were like talking to your own clients, how did the process look like from start to finish? So, for example, if someone reached out to you as in a client, what were the
Yeah,
first steps that you did in
yeah.
order
This
to sell them on the project, basically?
this is super interesting. Like to begin with, I had no idea at all about this. I had never done this. I didn't get it unless it was like a very straightforward ask that here's the budget, here's the project, yes or no. Like if they would come to me like this, that would be easier. But the type of conversations I found myself in was more that people wanted to get to know me. Um, and then I could often sit there for like an hour to talk to someone. And then towards the end of the conversation, without me even trying to sell something, obviously I knew that's why we were in a conversation, that we wanted to potentially work together. They would ask like if I would be open to do, for instance, their new visual identity. What happened then was that they asked how long it would take and what it would cost, and I was not prepared for those type of questions. So I started asking what they needed, and then I counted on my fingers and came up with an estimation of how many days it would take. Um, and then they were like, "Okay, but how much are you per day?" And then I said how much that was. Did another calculation, like live on the call, and said that okay, this is how much it would cost. Unfortunately, that way of selling is not very successful. Like I did end up getting good projects and good pay, but then you always get the question back. So let's say I said it would take 25 days. That someone then says, "Can you do it in 20?" And you're like, "I guess yes." So you end up in a bad position when you don't really know how to sell properly, I think.
Yeah, we had some similar experiences. The one we always mention is when someone asked us, yeah, and how much, similar situation. We were on a call for quite a while,
Hmm.
everything going well. And then the question, so how much will this cost? And then we just blurted out a number because we're like, okay, it should cost around this. Like we had a good feeling of how much things should cost, like
Yeah.
gut feeling. But then they ask things like, okay, but what's included? And then, if you haven't figured that out before that conversation, it starts to come across as you don't know what you're talking about. You're not prepared, or like figuring things out on the call is just not the best look. So, yeah, we had similar experiences.
Yeah. So, before, like when you had those experiences, did you have like did you just figure everything out on the go, like through the experience that you had them with another client? So maybe, okay, I shouldn't do this in the next call, or did you have like any external help? How did that go for the future
Uh,
calls?
yeah, I think I slowly figured it out. Both by looking at some material online, trying to really figure out like what happened in this last call. Like, is it worth sitting around for an hour talking to someone? Like, surely it is, right? To get to know people before you end up working with them, especially if you want to sell them on a big project or if you want to work together on a big project. But I definitely changed it. I definitely came more prepared as time went by. But I also started learning from people that know this much better than I do.
What types of people? Was it like online resources or genuinely like coaches, or I don't know, who did you turn to for help?
So it was kind of like at a point where I had been freelancing quite a bit, and I started getting more and more direct clients, which ended up that I had multiple projects at the same time, meaning that I needed support. I needed help in my projects. So I started hiring additional freelancers to help me out, which slowly started make me think that, okay, am I actually starting a studio here and not just freelancing? And I just still call myself a freelancer, right? And in those cases, I tended to be in the same type of conversations that I was in the past, that I mentioned before, that I had like these long conversations. But where it ended up instead then was that towards the negotiation, if we call it like this, or like the proposal, I would somehow try to squeeze in a question if it was fine that I also had another designer with me, like asking for their permission versus saying that this is how I work. This sometimes turned out really bad and sometimes good. But it was also a time where I was like, I need to do something about this because I have no idea how to do it. So I consumed online resources. I came across a YouTube video with, I had watched a bunch of like things on how to build a studio and things like this. But I came across one video where one coach was basically talking about like sales and those type of things and how to structure that. And I looked him up and I signed up for like a free workshop that he had, like a lead generation thing. Of course, I get that. I joined his workshop, and after 5 minutes, I knew I had to sign up for his program. Like it was obvious to me, and that changed everything later on for me.
Can we ask what was like the content of the program you signed up for?
Yeah. So this coach is very focused on helping creative business owners, like freelancers that are going from freelancer to studio to agency. His name is Matt SM. It's really good. Nowadays we're good connections still, and he has helped me really to change a bit of my mindset. So yeah, I consumed that. I got into the workshop. I completely understood that I needed to act on this in order to get to the next level somehow.
That's such a good advice, though, because I think that there is I wouldn't say maybe a bias in a sense, like maybe like if you get like a consultant or if you get like a coach, that you might be like in trouble or like failing, even though it's actually a really good business move to, when you have like questions or like you're unsure about something, to get like some help.
Yeah, and to invest into your own business. We're always trying to get clients to invest in their businesses by buying our services. But then when we invest in our own, it's always like, oh, do I really need to spend this money? Or like, is it really worth it? Do I really need this? And then we're like kind of being exactly like the clients we hate who don't want to spend money on creative services.
100%, 100%. Exactly the type of situation I was in, right? It was the first time I was going to invest in myself, it was basically education for myself, but as a business owner. But I joined a program. It was over a year, and it helped me change everything. At this point, I was working consistently with freelancers, so we were already a team. I didn't call myself a team, though. I was like, oh, I'm a freelancer. I have some extra help. But I started thinking about like, well, is this actually a studio? Should I maybe actually say that we're a studio eventually? So when I joined this program, got into some conversations with multiple coaches as well as this community that was around it. It became clear to me that I simply just had like the biggest imposter syndrome ever, and I didn't dare to call myself a studio. While people are one person sitting at home, right, designing by themselves, surely that could also be called a studio. But somehow I felt like I'm not like 20 people. How can I possibly call myself a studio acting like an agency?
Yeah, that's such a real experience for creative people, is the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
And it's understandable and it's valid, but it's also valid to be proud of your achievements and also to like position yourself as that. And you'd already
Yeah.
been working with really big clients and with people. You were already doing the work as a studio. You just weren't telling people you're a studio. So it's just really a matter of the communication that was missing.
Yeah, 100%.
was that one of the changes that you have then implemented, like as per their suggestions? Or what other changes were they suggesting for you to implement?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I ended up founding like a proper company, like a GmbH. So that meant that I could also do business in a maybe a slightly more serious way. I could start hiring people if I wanted, and all of this. Plus, that it was easier to, I think, with big clients as well. Like if you want to be hired as a studio, it's somehow easier to actually be a studio, like a real company, versus being a freelancer calling yourself a studio. So that's one. I learned a lot about sales. Like I learned how to actually build like a conversation, going from beginning to end, figuring out if you're the right partner for someone, and also change the mindset a little bit about it. Because at the end of the day, we just want to work with clients that we really like, right? And we don't want to end up working with clients just because of the money or because that they're a famous brand or something. We want to work with them because we want to do really good work and we believe in that we are the right person for it. And I think in addition to this, I learned like how to build a process, how to build packages, but most importantly, I learned how to niche myself on niche studio, which I didn't realize before.
That's our biggest, one
That's-
of our biggest topics.
We talk about it all the time, niching down. I noticed when I looked at your website, it was extremely clear
Yeah.
what your niche is and what the studio does and what clients. If I were a client in that niche, I would be like, okay, this studio looks like someone who
It
would be
speaks
for
to
me.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very impressive and also exactly what we're always telling people to do. Was it
Yeah.
scary for you to do that? Like, because I think a lot of people, what we always hear, like, or mostly in like online spaces, is people feel like niching down is limiting or you're closing doors to clients who might need some other type of work that you may have offered in the past. Was that scary to you at all, or did you feel pretty confident doing it?
Oh, it was super scary. It took me a long time to get there. But it was very, very interesting as well, this process, because like in the last 10 years before starting the studio, I had like been working a lot within the music space and music and tech space, music and culture. I've been like working a lot for Spotify, Sony Music. I've been part of rebranding Discord, and there were like a lot of things going on that was like tied to the same thing. So being in this program and like speaking to the coaches, speaking to other entrepreneurs, basically, if you want to call it like this, like they all were kind of like guided towards niching down. And I was like trying to figure out how to articulate my niche. But it was so hard to see what was right in front of me to actually say that, well, clearly my experience is really within music and culture. Like, why do I try to overthink it? Like, this is what I'm good at. This is where my experience lies. And this is what people want to pay for. So let's just go for it. And by accepting that, telling my own story, doing the right thing, it has opened up an insane amount of doors, honestly. So it's incredible. Like when you allow yourself to do that.
Yeah, that's super inspirational. What, like, when you started niching down and you started communicating differently,
Hmm.
what is something where you can pinpoint something that has like genuinely changed? Like, was it like suddenly more leads coming in, or just like quality leads coming in? What has changed exactly after you niche down?
Yeah, super interesting like that, because as soon as you actually say what you're focused on, it's suddenly much easier to get into conversations. So like I could reach out to people within the music and culture space, the type of brands we'd work with, and people would actually, respond well to that, right? Of course, I have also done work for companies that are not in this niche, right? I've done work in fashion, I've done things for banks, I've done like things that are random like this, right? That isn't in that niche. But when you
Mhm.
really articulate like your strength and your experience, people somehow accept that and listen. So getting into conversation is a big one. I started getting invited to like speak at conferences because I had a super niched topic and something that I care a lot about, like to really have an effect on culture and on music. Um, but yeah, then also like when you are in new business conversations, like if you are an expert in something, like if you're vocal about it and say that, then you have nothing to like. If you're not saying that you're there to please everyone and please every category of work, then people also see you as a specialist, and that's often what people want to hire.
Since you niche down, you had like new doors open, new possibilities also for public speaking, position yourself as an expert in your niche. And I really wanted to know, like, in terms of like doors that opened in the direction to public speaking, was it like scary to start with the first conferences? Because again, you have to establish yourself as a expert there. And just going back to your imposter syndrome, was that cured or did anything come back there?
Oh, it was super hard.
Mm.
I found it super tricky to do that, but I um, I actually didn't step right into just speaking at big conferences. We were hosting some smaller like workshops on our own for people within the music and tech space. So like the studio like hosted that ourselves. So I was able to like try the waters a little bit with the niche. And that's actually something else as well that also allowed, with the niche, it allowed me to be able to do that type of thing, right? Host a workshop saying that we're focused on this. If you want to learn about it, you can join this. So we got people from the music industry to join those type of workshops, and it was also super interesting. Um, but yeah, then I was invited to speak first at ADC in Lithuania, which was still a big conference,
Mhm.
but it was in a place where I didn't necessarily know so many people. So I think that helped me to feel like that was a good first conference to speak at. It was super fun, like it was amazing. Um, and then I spoke at a couple more that same year, both at Ford Festival in Vienna, but also POV Budapest in Budapest, obviously. Um, and there was like much bigger stages with like I think around 700 people or so. Um, and that was super scary, right? But I just had to believe in what I was talking about, really write or like do a presentation in a way that I believed in and like talk from the heart and like really try to shape a presentation that I would find interesting myself somehow, I guess. Yeah, and not just flick through projects so much. I believe in so much more about talking about the belief of myself and the studio and the process and the philosophy that we have.
I imagine it being scary suddenly having like this big platform and like hundreds
Yeah,
of people who listen to you.
yeah.
And yeah, um, those workshops that you started, were there like some kind of like, why did you start them in the first place? Was it like some lead generation strategy, or was it like something that you just wanted to educate people, or how did that came about?
Yeah, there was definitely like a way to get into conversations as well. So a lead generation, um, which everyone that joins those are aware of, right? They're there because they need help with their brands. It was also super interesting to learn and try the waters in terms of like the way we communicate, the way we try to like identify the problems that our potential clients have, because that's the key, right? Because you need to figure out really what they want to hear, what you can actually help them with, versus just as a designer believe that they want a new shiny identity, which is not often the case, right? They want to communicate better because they need to sell their services or products, um, so that they need help with communications versus a new caller, for instance.
Yeah, that's such a good like tip.
Mm,
um, we had to like do that in the beginning. We were just really like trying to sell our services and not really like trying to get into, okay, what problems are we solving here and why are we better at identifying them than, for example, a competitor. I
yeah.
guess that's also like part of like the sales process and the trust process that you build with the client, especially for workshops. Like I've heard that sometimes that it's actually a pretty good way to generate leads and generate trust.
Mm.
So I think that's a really that's a really good point to start with lead generation.
I'm noting it down for
I
us.
also wrote it down for us. So definitely something to explore. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump a bit off the topic here so we can cover everything, because I'm really curious to when you started scaling, how that felt like to employ people, to have them on the payroll basically every month. Because with freelancers, you kind of just book them. And once the project is over, it's basically done.
Mm.
So with employees, it's a bit of a different story.
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned, like I started bringing on people to projects reoccurringly, and we continued booking freelancers, mainly all over Europe, to help us out. And when something goes wrong, we hire them again for another project, and somehow it ended up with that we ended up with a consistent flow of the similar group of people, which was very, very interesting. So like we became a bit of a collective force somehow that was the studio to begin with. And then I did my first real hire in Austria, and then my second real hire as well. So I like actually had people on payroll. Surely a bit scary, but as you know, as a business owner, as an agency owner, you're kind of I'm sure you guys have had maybe sleepless nights about like if someone is going to say yes to a project, is that signature going to come in? Are they actually going to pay for the project? And all of these type of things. But I felt like when you've done it over a few years and you realize that yes, there will be hiccups. I am going to do mistakes, but overall things are heading in the right direction. Then I think you can trust in yourself that you need to make those type of jumps, but like slowly. You can't. I know I have somehow scaled rather fast, but it is really important still to realize that it has happened over many years.
I feel like we maybe made the mistake of scaling too fast at a point, but at
Mm.
the same time, we needed the people to be able to deliver the projects. So it's always like a balance between, having enough people to deliver, but then also, do we really need that many people for this long? And it's a lot of like, weighing whether we need people to be here all the time. And then maybe it is better to just hire people per project for a
Yeah.
freelance basis, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really the typical agency model somehow, right? To hire freelancers just for the projects. In our case, it happens a lot though that we don't hire someone to just work on one project. We often have them work on multiple projects because there's going to be down days, and I think that's what's really broken with the traditional agency model, where you would end up having to pay someone for not working, and that would really be tough. I know there's so many ways around this, but our way is basically just to have someone be part of the studio for a bit, working on multiple things, but also they get a chance to work on a lot of different clients at the same time. So but to your point, I've heard something quite often, which is like, especially in building a studio and all of this, right? Which is that we tend to focus a lot on like sales, trying to get into conversations, try to get that next project, and then suddenly we're very busy for a few months. And then, of course, we realize that, okay, now I need to jump back into being creative again. I need to execute. They have paid me for this, right? And you forget about still being in those conversations about potential new business. And then you find yourself after 3-4 months, maybe not having enough work. And then you're like, okay, oh no, did I scale too fast here? But somehow in the long run, maybe it's a matter of having a consistent flow of both, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
finding a balance. And I think that's something that happens with time and experience and then figuring those things out. And it's definitely true that because we're juggling so many things, we're being creative, we have to execute, then we also have to do lead generation, we have to have conversations with clients, potential clients. It's a lot of things happening at once and it's hard to juggle that. And sometimes you put your focus too much in one direction, let the other stuff fall for a little while, and then you start to notice that a few months later. And then
Yeah,
you're like, oh wait,
100%.
now I need to go back to the lead generation stuff and the conversation stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
speaking about roles, how have your roles shifted since you started the studio?
Yeah. Um, like ever since like quite a few years now, like even when I was at Spotify, I was managing people. So like I've always been kind of used to like, um, do creative direction, art direction, managing a team, being on multiple projects is something I'm very used to since quite a few years. Um, but the most important hire that I did for my company was basically to bring in like help on the operation side. Because when I brought in help on the operation side, I could actually focus more on doing what I love to do, which is to design and do creative work, right? But also being very focused on those type of things. So that helped me a lot. So my role changed like this. But now we're currently 11 people, like in the team as of this moment. And it has definitely taken me to a place where I oversee a lot of projects at the same time. But I also have to be in a lot of conversations about a lot of different things, managing a lot of different people, and trying to make sure that everything runs smoothly from a creative standpoint. But also, of course, it taps into the operational, financial, and all of those things as well. Um, so it has changed like this. I think I don't think there is ever like a set and done for having the business. Like I don't think it's ever going to be like the perfect thing, and I'm going to be able to just be just smooth sailing basically. But instead, I really believe in that we're forever going to just improve it and make it really really good. So currently, it's really good, and I hope we can continue doing that. But it's a matter of turning the dials and constantly improve, I think.
We feel that too, that we're just
Mm.
constantly trying to improve what we already have and what we've already built. Make
Yeah.
things better, more work-life balance or more creativity, less client management, all that stuff.
Talking about
Yeah.
work-life balance, when I was researching you, I found an article where you talk about that you've implemented a 4 days week, which is not super usual in Austria. I mean, there are some, and we did the same. That's why I found it interesting. So when we had a
Mm.
bigger team, it was important for us that no one works 5 days.
Yeah.
And when you started hiring, was this already a thing that people only worked 4 days, or is this like a transition period you went through recently?
It was a transition period we went through during the spring this year, actually. So it's rather new.
Oh, okay.
Um, there as well, I asked around. I spoke to some contacts, even in Vienna at Wild. They also work a 4-day work week. So I managed to get some tip about how to actually implement that, how to create a transition period that feels right. Um, but yeah, implementing that has for me at least changed a lot. Like being able to disconnect for 3 days in a week, it's completely different from working 5 days and then having 2 days to like be off. I'm sure you guys feel the same, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Uh,
completely different. I can't even imagine only having 2 days. It's
yeah,
for me, I don't know. Friday is my day where I can do all my chores and then I actually have 2 days to relax.
yeah,
It's the best
yeah,
thing ever.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I
100%.
ended up working like still on Fridays, but it was more like internal projects, and
Mm.
it's also kind of like my hobby. So it's kind of like, I don't know, balancing
My
what I like
hobby
to
is
do.
work, so
But yeah, I don't know, like internal projects, I just truly enjoy, so I don't see them as much as working. And as soon as it gets too much, of course, like that day for me is a more like chill day. It's not,
Mm.
there's nothing like burning or stuff, just what I want to do really, and then I can
Yeah.
stop, which is like super important because in the beginning we were extremely burned out when we started the studio.
Mm.
When this just like leads me to the one of the final questions before we have to end it. But when you started out, I think a lot of people find themselves, us included, in a position where we just work basically 24/7.
Mm.
Was this something that happened to you too, or did you already have like a pretty good work-life balance?
Um, I think in my case, actually, because I've moved here for a relationship, I think I managed to cap my days quite well. I'm always working really hard on trying to be off my phone, put it away, like not look on emails and all of that when I'm off work. It goes in periods though.
Yeah.
But I think I I think in general, I managed to not work outside of office hours, and yeah, it's a struggle. But I'm also very, very motivated with the fact that, starting a studio, building a studio, it got me like a lot of new motivation of doing something that I didn't know so well, I wasn't good at. So even like when I'm on vacation, for instance, like the type of books I read these days is not what I read a long time ago, right? And now I'm trying to learn how to do what I do better. And part of that is creativity, right? But another part is um, a lot of other things, right? That's part of like building a business. And yeah, it makes me super motivated. So what I'm trying to say is that it's always on my mind, that I'm always trying to improve things.
Yeah, we know that
but
feeling.
but I'm staying off like working on projects when I'm off.
Yeah, that's fair. I do the same though.
I think that's what you do on Fridays. Yeah.
Yeah, I love reading books about business. I love,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm also like a sucker for self-improvement books.
Yeah.
Even if I don't like actually do anything about it, just motivates me. And yeah, I totally get that. Are there any
Yeah.
like books that you recommend for someone to read who's like, I don't know, a bit of a, like just starting out in a business?
Yeah, I recently read The Infinite Game, which is amazing. And then I also read A Reasonable Hospitality, which is an incredible book. If you want to like learn how to think a little bit different about how to manage your client and actually be the best person ever for your clients. Like those two are incredible books to read for different reasons. But yeah, those are my hottest tips right now.
Cool, taking note of that.
That actually brings us to our last question, which is, what advice would you give somebody or give to your past self? Like if you could go back in time and talk to yourself before you did all the freelancing stuff, building a studio, what advice could you give to somebody wanting to do something similar?
I think like really allow yourself to make a lot of mistakes. As I mentioned in the very beginning in my intro, I went to a school where we were taught to teach ourselves things. Like we were just meant to fail and learn how to do it better or whatever it was, right? Figure it out. And you have to allow yourself to fail. No one is perfect, even if it appears like this on the internet, right? So just go for it, make the mistakes, and go with your gut. Speak to a lot of people. That's the best way to get there.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. It was really inspiring to talk to you. I feel like we could relate on a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think this could like go on another hour.
Yeah, we could talk to you for ages, I feel like.
So there's also
I'm
a lot
sure.
of topics I wanted to touch upon, but maybe another time, maybe a part two.
Yeah, we'll make a part two. Yeah.
That
Thank you so
sounds
much
great.
for having me. It's been really, really nice to chat about this. And I'm so impressed as well that you guys are doing this, because I think, as you mentioned, it's like a topic that not a lot of people talk about, but many people are thinking about. So yeah, kudos to that.
Oh, thank you
so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Never Went to Business School. Don't forget to follow us here on Spotify. And if you enjoy our content, check out our YouTube channel for more educational videos and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack.